Happy Tuesday, June 16th, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Screenplayers News. We have seen the PlayStation 5 and a few next-gen games, but what about backwards compatibility? Well, here's what Marc Cerny, who is the lead system architect for the PlayStation 4 and 5, said at the GDC presentation this past March. Almost all of the top 100 PlayStation 4 games will be playable at launch. What criteria is Sony using to determine the top 100 PlayStation 4 games? Playtime! So basically, these 100 PlayStation 4 games are the ones that people have played the longest. Despite this pretty clear statement, a lot of people are hoping that Sony will go crazy on backwards compatibility and supports games all the way back to the original PlayStation 1. Okay, I certainly hope so in my wildest dreams. However, what I find bizarre is the amount of people in the media and press industry that in their articles and videos are, in my opinion, misleading the users by claiming that Sony will make the PlayStation 5 backwards compatible with games from the PlayStation 1, 2, 3 and of course 4. No one can predict the future, and you can argue that Marc Cerny could be deliberately misleading all of us to then wow the world with a crazy announcement later on. What we can do, though, is a little bit of digging to establish the likelihood of that happening. Before we dive into it, let me remind you guys and girls that you should subscribe to the channel and click on the notification bell down below for the best PlayStation and Xbox news and insights. Also, we stream every Thursday at 6 p.m. UK on Twitch. Let's cover very quickly the news first. There's a new patent that Microsoft filed with regards to the Xbox Series branding. Everyone thinks that this confirms that much rumored, cheaper, less powerful, and high-volume machine, codenamed Lockhart, basically an Xbox Series S. My 2 cents. Sure, it could be that, but this patent basically secures the name for any future machine launch or a mid-cycle refresh. I will talk about this in detail next Tuesday on Screenplayers News. And now, with the news out of the way, let's talk about PlayStation 5 and backwards compatibility. I say we start by taking a look first at what the competition, i.e. Microsoft, is doing. I did a whole video on how Microsoft is being extremely consumer-friendly and going above and beyond with their backwards compatibility program. And if you would like more info on this, just click on the link above. Long story short, Microsoft is aiming to have all playable games on Xbox One to also run on Series X, with a few minor exceptions here and there. This is brilliant, but let's back up a bit and have a look at how backwards compatibility can be achieved. Broadly speaking, there are two methods. A, you bake the old console's chipset inside the new console, which is basically what Sony did with their first PlayStation 3 that basically had a PlayStation 2 inside it. This method is probably the best in terms of reliability, but it drives the console's price up, and also, it doesn't really help the console's size and shape factor. Or B, software emulation, which is the route that Microsoft is taking. Does this mean the software emulation is easy to achieve? Not at all. Games are optimized for the specific console that they were meant to run on. So emulating those conditions is a technical challenge. Then you have to have people playtesting the games that are meant to be compatible to make sure that they indeed are working with no hiccups. And you still need to keep doing it every time that the console's firmware is updated throughout its life cycle. But let's hear it straight from the source. This is what Jason Ronald, who is the director of program management at Xbox, said about the job that they're doing at Microsoft. Maintaining compatibility presents a massive technical challenge, as fundamental system and chip architectures advance across generations. Developers highly optimize their games to the unique capabilities and performance of a console to provide the best experience for their players. To make the Xbox Series X our most compatible console ever required both significant innovation in the design of the custom processor, as well as the unique design of the Xbox operating system and hypervisor at the heart of our next generation platform. With more than 100,000 hours of playtesting already completed, thousands of games are already playable on Xbox Series X today. By the time we launch this holiday, the team will have spent well over 200,000 hours ensuring your game library is ready for you to jump in immediately. So a whole lot of work and resources are spent on this, but there's yet another challenge: licensing. Third-party games are only licensed for the consoles they were meant for. If Microsoft and Sony would like to make those same games available for current or next-gen consoles, they would have to get the green light from whomever hold their rights. In some cases, there are even more parties involved. One of the best examples is a game with music in it, such as Tony Hawk. Those artists and their labels licensed their music to Activision for that game running on those platforms at that time. If all of a sudden that game became playable on nowadays consoles, those record labels' lawyers would be knocking on Activision's doors in 2 nanoseconds. So we established that backwards compatibility is pretty tough to achieve and also expensive. But demand is there, right? Is it? Unfortunately, there is not much data around in terms of usage of the backwards compatibility feature of a console. What I could find is data released by Ars Technica in 2017. Their data shows how much time, on average, a sample of 930k Xbox One users spent on the console's features and services between September 2016 and February 2017. On average, Xbox One users spent 1.5% of their time playing Xbox 360 backwards compatible titles on those 4.5 months, making backwards compatibility the least used feature after the Netflix, YouTube, TV, and other non-game apps on their Xbox One. Microsoft did comment on this and stated that the usage data provided by Xbox API consisted of incomplete estimates of total Xbox Live usage and does not reflect a complete account of recent usage sessions by the sampled gamer tags, thus implying that Ars Technica's data is not completely reliable. Okay, cool, but let's have a look at what Jim Ryan, president and CEO of Sony Interactive Entertainment, had to say about backwards compatibility back in June 2016. We have experience of backwards compatibility. The earliest PS3 model was backwards compatible with the PlayStation 2, and it is a much requested feature, but actually it's not so greatly used. I think we have enough elements here to draw our conclusions. I'll reiterate, no one can predict the future, and it might as well be that Sony, completely out of the blue, decides to surprise us all. However, I think what we have gone through during this episode has demonstrated that backwards compatibility requires a lot of effort in terms of workforce and funding, involves multiple parties, and data suggests that although backwards compatibility is a heavily requested feature, people end up not really using it as much. And with 110.4 million PlayStation 4 and 46.9 Xboxes sold worldwide, Sony is the current market leader. They don't have to chase their competitor and therefore have a higher margin of error. By contrast, Microsoft has to do everything in their power to convince PlayStation users to jump ship, gaining market share, and also try retaining current Xbox users by giving them heavy incentives to stay on the platform. I want to make it very clear that I am not against backwards compatibility. In fact, I would love Sony to do exactly the same thing that Microsoft is doing with their backwards compatibility program. But at the moment, business-wise, doesn't make sense. Sure, If Microsoft starts selling Xbox Series X's like hotcakes, and the main reason for this is their backwards compatibility program, then Sony will have to respond. Xbox One users, if you're listening, sincerely and honestly, how many times during this past year you have used the backwards compatibility feature to play any Xbox 360 or original Xbox titles on your Xbox One? Frankly, the answer for me is 0. And PlayStation users, would you prefer Sony to invest time, effort, and resources on backwards compatibility, or would you rather have the company focusing on the future of gaming? Well, let me know, either in the comment section down below or on Twitter at screenplayers_. Have a great week, you lot, and happy gaming!